Sitting at the table at my son's wedding, I noticed my 7-year-old grandson grabbing my hand. "Grandma," he whispered urgently, "we have to leave right now." I looked at his pale face when he asked me, "Did you not see the note under the table?" Slowly, I bent down and took a folded paper. When I read the words written on it, my blood froze. Table 8. Add shrimp to the child's portion. My grandson had a deadly allergy to shrimp. The woman who was supposed to be our new family had silently planned his murder. But before we continue, make sure you are subscribed to the channel Grandma's Revenge Tales, and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love to know how far our stories reach. I never thought I would be here, on the edge of a disaster, on a day that should be a celebration. I am Rachel. I am 67 years old, and for a long time I believed our family had found its way after the tragedy. My son Michael lost his wife Christina in an accident 3 years ago, leaving him alone to raise our little Gabriel, who was only 4 years old at the time. I still remember that terrible day, the phone call that changed everything. I was in the kitchen making dinner when the phone rang. The deep voice of the police officer on the other end of the line informed me that Christina had suffered a fatal accident on the highway. A truck lost control, and she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The plate I was holding slipped from my hands and smashed against the floor. That sound of breaking porcelain seemed to echo what was happening in our hearts. Michael fell apart completely. During the funeral, while the rain fell relentlessly as if the sky were crying with us, he remained motionless in front of the casket, unable to say a word. Gabriel was so small and confused. He kept pulling at my skirt, asking when his mommy would come back. Every innocent question was a new stab in my chest. In the months that followed, my son buried himself in work as a form of escape. He would leave early and come back late when Gabriel was already sleeping. The boy suffered more than all of us. He stopped talking. His eyes lost their shine, and I became his main support. Every night I rocked him to sleep, telling him stories about his mother trying to keep her memory alive. "Grandma, did my mommy like the stars?" he asked me once, looking out the bedroom window. I swallowed the lump in my throat and answered yes, that she loved watching the night sky. I do not know if it was true, but in that moment, I wanted to build a bridge between him and the mother he had lost so early. My niece Lisa also became an essential part of our lives. Orphaned since she was little, I raised her as if she were my daughter. She came over almost every day, bringing colorful books and candy for Gabriel. She sat with him on the living room rug, teaching him to read, helping him with drawings, treating him like a little brother. There was something special in the way she cared for him, an affection that went beyond simple attention. I silently watched how Lisa's eyes followed Michael when he arrived from work. There was something more than family respect in that look, something that seemed to grow every day. I never mentioned it, fearing I would disturb the fragile balance we had found. Our life continued in a quiet routine of mourning and adaptation until Vanessa entered the scene. Michael met her at work. She was the new marketing manager at the company. One autumn afternoon, he called me with a voice I had not heard in years. "Mom, I want to introduce you to someone special." That night, Vanessa arrived at our house in a flawless red dress. Her smile seemed rehearsed and perfect, as if every muscle in her face had been carefully positioned. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Miss Rachel," she said with a melodious voice, while her eyes examined every detail of the house, stopping at the photographs of Christina on the wall. I prepared a special dinner, the lasagna that Michael liked so much and homemade chocolate truffles for dessert. Vanessa praised everything profusely. "This lasagna is divine, Ms. Rachel. You have to give me the recipe," she said between delicate bites and calculated smiles. I thanked her politely, but something inside me remained uneasy. Gabriel, usually talkative during dinner, remained in absolute silence. He played with his food, keeping his head down as if he wanted to become invisible. When Vanessa took a chocolate bar from her purse and offered it to him, the boy simply turned his face away without even reaching out his hand. Michael frowned, ready to scold his son, but I intervened quickly. He must be tired, I justified, trying to lighten the mood. I noticed a flash of irritation in Vanessa's eyes so fast that I almost doubted I had seen it. Lisa was also at dinner, sitting across from me, observing everything with watchful eyes. When Vanessa took Michael's hand under the table, I noticed how Lisa's fingers tightened around her napkin, her eyes lowering to her plate. That silence spoke more than 1,000 words. After dinner, Vanessa insisted on washing the dishes despite my protests. "Let me help Miss Rachel. It is the least I can do." I watched her in the kitchen with precise movements, organizing everything perfectly. For a moment, I thought maybe she is really good for our family. That thought was short-lived. When I went back to the living room, I saw Gabriel coloring quietly in a corner. Vanessa approached him, praising his drawing. The boy immediately dropped the pencil and moved away like a scared animal. Vanessa looked at me with a forced smile. "What a shy boy," she said sweetly, but I noticed something cold in her eyes that gave me chills. Michael, however, seemed enchanted, completely blind to any alarm signals. While they said goodbye at the door, he looked at her as if he had found an oasis after years in the desert. I stood there watching the car drive away with a strange feeling growing inside me like a bad omen. From that day on, Vanessa became a constant part of our lives, appearing without warning, bringing expensive gifts for Michael and toys for Gabriel that always ended up forgotten at the bottom of the closet. Slowly, she started changing our habits and our routines, infiltrating every space of our family. As the months went by, Vanessa became an increasingly frequent presence in our house. She seemed to be everywhere, remodeling our family life like a decorator, unsatisfied with the arrangement of the furniture. At first, I tried to convince myself that she just wanted to help, that she was trying to fit into our family, which was still fragile from grief. One sunny Saturday morning, I was knitting a scarf for the approaching winter when Vanessa appeared at the living room door. "Ms. Rachel, I'm going to take Gabriel for a walk in the park. Is that okay with you?" Her enthusiasm seemed excessive, almost theatrical. I looked at Gabriel, who played silently with his wooden blocks on the rug. His face remained expressionless upon hearing the invitation, but I nodded. Sure, a little fresh air will do him good. When they returned a few hours later, Vanessa entered triumphantly, as if she had won an Olympic medal. He had so much fun. He did not stop playing on the slide and even asked for more ice cream, she said excitedly. But Gabriel came in with his head down. His blue t-shirt, which I had ironed carefully that morning, was stained with dirt and something that looked like ketchup. More alarming than the stains was his silence. "Did you have fun, my love?" I asked, bending down to be at his eye level. He just nodded slightly, his gaze fixed on the floor. Before I could ask more, Vanessa intervened. "I already told you he loved it, Miss Rachel. Gabriel is just a little too shy to express himself. That night, while I was bathing him, I noticed red marks on his arm as if someone had grabbed him tightly." "What happened here, Gabriel?" I asked gently. He just shook his head. "I fell at the park," he muttered so low I almost did not hear him. On another occasion, I was in the kitchen making lunch when I heard voices in the living room. Michael had gone out to run errands at the bank, and Vanessa showed up unannounced, as had become her habit. At first her voice sounded sweet while she talked to Gabriel, but suddenly the tone changed drastically. "I already told you not to touch that. Why do you have to be so clumsy? Clean up that mess right now." The coldness in her voice made me freeze in the middle of chopping onions. I went out of the kitchen quickly, and as if by magic, Vanessa returned to her sweet tone. "Our Gabriel is so creative, right? Look what a beautiful castle he is building." But my grandson's face told another story. His lips were pressed in a thin line, and there was fear in his eyes that broke my heart. I tried to smile, nodding, while a suspicion grew inside me like a weed. I started noticing other signs. Gabriel, who had finally started to open up after his mother's death, closed himself off again. He stopped singing the songs he learned at school. His drawings, formerly colorful and full of life, were now predominantly dark, with strong and angular lines. The teacher called me after class one afternoon. "Ms. Rachel, I'm worried about Gabriel. He's been very quiet, isolated from his classmates. Last week, when a classmate dropped her pencil near him, he shrank away as if he expected to be scolded. Her eyes conveyed genuine concern. Is everything okay at home?" I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the doubt I had been carrying. "We are just going through some changes," I answered vaguely. On the way home, Gabriel grabbed my hand tighter than usual. Suddenly, he stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and looked at me with those huge eyes, so similar to his mother's. "Grandma, I do not want to stay alone with Aunt Vanessa." His voice was almost a whisper, as if he feared being heard. I knelt on the sidewalk, ignoring the pain in my knees. "Why, my love? Did something happen?" He lowered his gaze, kicking an imaginary pebble. "She gets mad when no one is looking. She says I am a burden to Daddy." It was as if a hole opened under my feet. I hugged him tight, feeling his small body tremble against mine. "No one will ever hurt you, my love. I promise." The words came out firm, but inside, I was falling apart. Lisa, who had met us at the school exit, heard everything. I saw indignation grow on her face, her hands closing into fists. She crouched next to Gabriel and stroked his hair. "Everything is okay now, little one. We are here with you." That night, after Gabriel went to sleep, Lisa and I talked in the kitchen in hushed voices. "Aunt Rachel, this cannot continue. She is traumatizing Gabriel." Her eyes shone with held-back tears. "Michael needs to know what is happening." I sighed deeply. "Your cousin is in love, Lisa. He sees in Vanessa a chance to rebuild his life." I ran my hand through my gray hair. "I am afraid he will not believe us, or worse, that he will choose to stay with her. And if something serious happens to Gabriel?" Lisa questioned, her voice trembling slightly. The question hung in the air like a charged cloud. In the following days, I started watching Vanessa even more closely. I noticed how her smile never reached her eyes when she spoke to Gabriel, how she checked first if she was being watched before interacting with him, how her perfect nails sometimes dug into his arm when she thought no one was looking. Michael, for his part, seemed rejuvenated. He smiled again, making plans. "Mom, I am thinking of asking Vanessa to marry me," he confided in me one night, his eyes shining with hope. My heart shrank. How could I destroy that newfound happiness, but how could I remain silent knowing my grandson was suffering? Gabriel's 7th birthday was the day I became certain that something had to be done. Lisa spent the whole morning making a chocolate cake decorated with little superheroes, Gabriel's current passion. When she arrived with the cake, the boy's eyes lit up for the first time in months. "Aunt Lisa is Spider-Man," he exclaimed, running to hug her. She lifted him in her arms, covering his face with kisses. "I made it especially for you, my hero." The love between them was so palpable, it filled the room. Vanessa arrived late in a dress too sophisticated for a child's party. She brought a gift wrapped in expensive paper, which she handed to Gabriel with a distant pat on the shoulder and a happy birthday champ that sounded as sincere as a politician on a campaign. Gabriel opened the gift, a video game too complex for his age, and thanked her politely before setting it aside and running back to Lisa, who was waiting for him with another surprise, a sticker album he had wanted for months. I saw Vanessa's face harden for an instant, her eyes narrowing as she watched the scene. In that moment, I was certain that not only did she not love Gabriel, but she resented him. She resented the love Michael had for his son, the space the boy occupied in our lives, the living reminder of Christina that he represented. When the guests started to leave, I approached Michael. "Son, we need to talk about Gabriel." I tried to keep my voice calm. I have noticed he seems scared around Vanessa. Michael frowned. "Mom, do not start. Vanessa is trying very hard to get close to him. Gabriel is the one who needs to give her a chance." His defensive tone surprised me. Besides, he hesitated, looking around to make sure we were alone. "I am going to propose next week." The words fell like a sentence. I realized I had lost the chance to warn him. Now I only had to protect Gabriel while I figured out a way to prove what I already knew at the bottom of my heart. Vanessa was a threat to our family. The marriage proposal took place in an expensive restaurant downtown. Michael spared no expense. Champagne, a violinist, a diamond ring. When he returned home that night, his eyes shone like I had not seen in years. "She said, 'Yes, Mom,' he announced, hugging me tightly. 'We are getting married in 2 months.' I forced a smile while my stomach twisted. "So fast, son?" I tried to sound casual, worried only about logistics. Would it not be better to wait a little longer to organize everything well? "Vanessa already has everything planned," he explained enthusiastically. "She knows an amazing event planner. It will be a perfect wedding, Mom. Exactly what we need to start over as a family. As a family." The words echoed in my mind while he went up the stairs to tell the news to Gabriel. I followed him silently, stopping at the door of my grandson's room to watch the scene. Gabriel was sitting on the bed, hugging the old teddy bear Christina had given him on his last birthday. Michael knelt in front of him, holding his little hands. "Son, I have amazing news. Aunt Vanessa is going to marry me. She is going to live with us, and she will be your new mommy. Isn't that wonderful?" The boy's face went pale. His eyes, always so expressive, filled with something I recognized immediately as pure terror. He did not say a word, only nodded mechanically like a little robot programmed to please. Michael did not notice or chose not to notice his son's reaction. He ruffled his hair affectionately and left the room, passing by me with a radiant smile. "He will get used to it, Mom. Kids adapt." When I entered the room, Gabriel was sitting in exactly the same position as if he were frozen in time. "Grandma." His voice was almost inaudible. "Will I have to stay alone with her every day now?" My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. "No, my love, I will always be here for you." I hugged him tight, feeling his small body tremble against mine. Always. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Vanessa took full control of the wedding, transforming it into a grandiose event worthy of celebrities. The most luxurious hall in the city was booked. Florists were emptied. A renowned chef was hired to create a sophisticated menu. She appeared at the house daily with catalogs, samples, guest lists. Everything had to be perfect, flawless, worthy of a magazine. In the middle of this frenzy, Gabriel became increasingly invisible. When he was present in conversations, it was only as an accessory, a detail to be resolved. "Gabriel needs a new suit," Vanessa commented one afternoon like someone talking about a mannequin. "Navy blue will match the wedding color palette. And we need to cut that hair. He looks like a savage." The boy, sitting silently in a corner of the living room with his toy car, shrank visibly. His eyes found mine, pleading for protection. "I will take him to his usual barber," I answered firmly. "And he has a nice suit I bought him for Christmas. It is practically new." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Miss Rachel, this is not just any birthday. It is my wedding. Everything has to be perfect." The way she emphasized my did not go unnoticed. One afternoon while Michael was at work, Vanessa took Gabriel to try on the suit. When they returned, the boy ran straight to my room where he found me folding clothes. "What happened, my love?" I asked, noticing his cheeks wet with tears. "She pinched me hard in the fitting room," he whispered, showing me small red marks on his arm. "She said if I tell Daddy, no one will believe me because I am just a lying child." My blood boiled. "Gabriel, that is not true. You have never been a liar." She also said, his voice cracked, that when they get married, they are going to send me to a boarding school far away from here. That Daddy already agreed. It was like receiving a punch in the stomach. I hugged him tight, my own tears threatening to fall. "That is never going to happen, my love. I promise." That night, after Gabriel fell asleep, I confronted Michael in the kitchen. "Son, is it true you are thinking of sending Gabriel to a boarding school?" He looked at me surprised. "What are you talking about, Mom? Gabriel told me Vanessa talked about sending him away after the wedding." Michael sighed heavily. Mom, he must have misunderstood. Vanessa only mentioned there are excellent full-time schools we could consider in the future. Nothing has been decided. Michael, your son, is terrified. Do you not realize what is happening? Since Vanessa came into our lives, Gabriel has changed completely. He is withdrawn, scared. She hurts him when you are not looking. Enough. Michael slammed the table hard, making me step back. I am tired of these insinuations. Vanessa is trying to create a family with us, and you just put obstacles in the way. Gabriel needs to adapt to this new reality, and you too, Mom. I was left speechless watching my son leave the kitchen. I had never seen him like this, so blind, so willing to ignore the signs that were right in front of him. In that moment, I realized it would be useless to try to convince him. He was completely under Vanessa's spell. I told Lisa about the conversation the next morning. We were in the garden, away from Gabriel's ears, who was watching cartoons in the living room. "This is unbearable, Aunt Rachel." She ran her hands through her hair, clearly distressed. "Michael cannot be this blind. Love does that, Lisa. He thinks he found a second chance." She looked at me intensely. Sometimes I wonder if he really loves her, or if he is just running away from loneliness, from grief. There was deep sadness in her voice that confirmed my suspicions about her feelings. "I think even he does not know the answer," I replied gently. In the week before the wedding, Lisa started coming every day. She brought little surprises for Gabriel, a new book, a collector car, homemade cookies. Her presence was like a ray of sunshine in increasingly gloomy days. One afternoon, while Gabriel played in the garden under my watch, I surprised Lisa in the kitchen crying silently while washing dishes. "What is wrong, my dear?" I asked, putting my hand on her shoulder. She tried to hide it, drying her eyes quickly. "It is nothing, Aunt Rachel. Lisa, I have known you since you were little. I know when something is wrong." She took a deep breath, her shoulders shaking slightly. "It is just that it hurts me to see Michael making this terrible mistake, and it hurts me even more knowing Gabriel is going to suffer because of him." She paused, biting her lip. "And maybe it hurts a little because I always—" She did not need to complete the sentence. I hugged her tenderly. "I know, my dear, I always knew." The eve of the wedding, while I helped Gabriel try on his suit for the last time, he asked me a question that left me breathless. "Grandma, if I get sick tomorrow, very sick, I will not have to go to the wedding, right?" I looked at those innocent eyes so full of fear and desperation, and I felt my resolve strengthen. No matter what happened, I would not allow him to suffer anymore. "Do not worry, my love. Grandma will be with you the whole time tomorrow. Nothing bad is going to happen." Little did I know how prophetic that promise would become. The morning of the wedding dawned with a perfect blue sky, as if nature itself were conspiring for Vanessa's special day. The chosen venue was a dazzling place with huge windows that let in the golden sunlight, illuminating the arrangements of white roses and orchids decorating every table. I was helping Gabriel get ready in one of the side rooms of the hall. He was wearing the navy blue suit Vanessa had insisted on, looking even smaller and more vulnerable in those formal clothes. His little hands shook while I adjusted his bow tie. "Are you okay, my love?" I asked, kneeling to be at his eye level. He nodded mechanically, but his gaze was distant and lost. "Grandma, after today will Aunt Vanessa live in our house forever?" His voice was almost a whisper. I felt my heart shrink. "We are going to take it one day at a time, okay? Today you just have to worry about staying close to me or Aunt Lisa." I forced a reassuring smile, although inside I was falling apart. The guests began to arrive, filling the hall with animated murmurs and exclamations about the sumptuous decor. Michael circulated among them, elegant in his gray suit, with a smile I had not seen on his face since before Christina's death. A part of me wanted to be happy for him for this second chance at life. But the other part, the part that had witnessed the terror in Gabriel's eyes, remained on high alert. Vanessa was in a separate room surrounded by bridesmaids who looked more like assistants adjusting every detail of her elaborate wedding dress. Through the half-open door, I could see her barking orders, her face tense like someone who would not tolerate any mistake on her perfect day. Lisa arrived wearing a simple seafoam green dress that highlighted her eyes. She came straight to us, kneeling to hug Gabriel tightly. "My little hero, you look so handsome," she exclaimed, tickling his stomach. It was the first time that day I saw a genuine smile on his face. We were led to the table, designated for the immediate family. Table 8, right in the center of the hall, decorated with care like all the others, but strategically positioned so everyone could see the new happy family being formed. The ceremony was brief and flawless, like everything Vanessa planned. She entered looking stunning drawing size from the guests. Michael waited for her at the improvised altar, his eyes shining with emotion. Gabriel was by his side holding the rings, his small figure rigid as a statue. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, the hall erupted in applause. I watched the couples kiss with a sense of unreality, as if I were watching a movie where I knew something terrible was about to happen, but I was powerless to stop it. The reception started shortly after. A jazz band played softly while waiters circulated with glasses of champagne and trays of elaborate appetizers. Gabriel sat between Lessa and me at table 8, playing silently with a small red car he had brought hidden in his pocket. "That little car is very nice," I commented, trying to distract him from his visible discomfort. "My mommy gave it to me," he answered quietly, as if sharing a secret. "On my 4th birthday." I felt tears burning the corners of my eyes. That little piece of painted metal was his link to Christina, a tangible memory of the love she had for him. Discreetly, I wiped my eyes and smiled at Gabriel. The waiters began serving dinner. Sophisticated dishes presented with artistic perfection were placed in front of us. I noticed Gabriel's plate looked slightly different from the others. "What are you going to eat, honey?" I asked casually, although a silent alarm began to ring in my mind. He pushed his fork around the plate, separating the food carefully. "I am not very hungry," he replied in a low voice. Lisa leaned in, examining his plate. "It looks delicious, but if you are not hungry, you do not have to eat it all. Just try a little bit." That was when I noticed the waiter, a young man with a kind face named Charlie, looking nervously toward our table while talking to another employee. There was something in his expression, a mix of confusion and worry that put me instantly on alert. Gabriel kept playing with his red car, pushing it back and forth on the white tablecloth. Suddenly, the toy slipped and fell to the floor, rolling under the table. He ducked quickly to retrieve it. It was in that moment that everything changed. Gabriel froze under the table, his eyes fixed on something on the floor. When he finally reappeared, his face was pale as paper. "Grandma." My heart raced. "What is it, my love?" He grabbed my hand tightly, his little fingers freezing against my skin. "Grandma, you did not look under the table, did you?" I felt a chill run down my spine. Slowly, I took my napkin as if I had dropped it, and as I bent down, I discreetly lifted the corner of the white tablecloth. There, almost hidden by the shadow, was a small piece of folded paper. Stretching my arm, I took it quickly and returned to my normal position. With trembling hands, I unfolded the paper under the table, away from curious eyes. The handwriting was rushed, almost illegible, but the words jumped out at me like embers. "Table 8, add shrimp to the child's portion." The air froze in my lungs. Gabriel had a severe allergy to shrimp, an allergy that could be deadly. A single bite would be enough to trigger a reaction that, without immediate attention, could cost him his life. The whole family knew about this. Michael was obsessively careful with his son's diet since we discovered the allergy when Gabriel was only 3 years old and almost died after an allergic reaction at a restaurant. I looked at the untouched plate in front of my grandson. There were small pieces camouflaged among the other foods, chopped shrimp, almost imperceptible, mixed with the sauce and herbs. The horror of the situation hit me like a high-speed train. This was not an accident. It was not a kitchen error. It was a deliberate attempt to hurt, or worse, an innocent child. "Gabriel," I whispered urgently. "Do not touch the food. Not a single bite." He nodded, eyes wide with fear. He knew. Somehow that 7-year-old boy had sensed the danger before any of us. I looked at Lisa, who noticed my expression and immediately leaned in. "What is wrong?" she murmured worriedly. Discreetly, I passed her the paper under the table. I saw her face pale as she read, her eyes widening with shock and then narrowing with a fury I had never seen before. "We have to get out of here," she said, her voice tense and low. "Now." I nodded, holding Gabriel's hand firmly. "Let's go to the bathroom, honey," I said loudly for anyone who might be listening. "You need to wash your hands before eating." We got up quietly, trying not to draw attention. Gabriel was between the two of us, protected like a precious treasure. When we were almost at the door, I saw the young waiter, Charlie, watching us with a strange expression, a mix of relief and fear. In the hallway outside the ballroom, away from the guests' eyes, Lisa grabbed my arm. "Aunt Rachel, this is attempted murder," she said, her voice trembling with indignation. "We have to call the police." I looked at Gabriel, who was shaking like a leaf in the wind, clutching my skirt. "First, we have to make sure he is safe. Then we will solve the rest." We headed to the hotel reception, where I quickly explained the situation to the manager, omitting my suspicions about who might be behind it. He immediately provided us with a private room where we could wait while we decided what to do. Gabriel curled up on a sofa, hugging his red car like a protective amulet. Lisa sat next to him, draping her arm protectively over his shoulders, while I paced back and forth, trying to organize my thoughts. "We need to find out where that note came from," I said finally. "And who wrote it?" "I know who it was," Gabriel said suddenly, his voice small but firm. "I saw Aunt Vanessa giving a paper to the girl in the pink dress." "Gloria," Lisa murmured. "Her younger sister." Something cold and determined settled inside me, a certainty that went beyond rage or fear. It was a resolution that no matter the cost, I would expose the truth and protect my grandson. "I'm going to talk to Charlie the waiter," I decided. He looked nervous, like he knew something. "And I will stay here with Gabriel," Lisa said, holding the boy close to her. "I will not leave him alone for a second." I left the room with a clear purpose. I was no longer just a worried grandmother. I was a woman on a mission. I found Charlie near the kitchen organizing trays. When he saw me, he paled and looked ready to run. "Wait," I asked, my voice firmer than I felt. "I need to talk to you." He looked nervously to the sides. "Ma'am, I am working. It is about this." I showed him the folded paper. "Do you know what this is?" I got closer, lowering my voice. "My grandson has a deadly allergy to shrimp. This note could have cost him his life. If you know something, please help me." Something in my plea seemed to affect him. His shoulders slumped and he sighed deeply. "A girl handed it to me," he confessed. "She said it was a special instruction from the chef. I was supposed to deliver it to the kitchen, but I dropped it accidentally when I was carrying the plates. I did not know. I swear I did not know what was written." "What girl?" I pressed, although I already suspected the answer. "The bride's sister. The one in the pink dress." Everything fit. The final piece of the puzzle revealed itself, exposing a picture of evil I could barely comprehend. How could anyone try to hurt an innocent child? And on the day of her own wedding? "Thank you for telling me," I told Charlie. "You may have saved my grandson's life today." I went back to the room where Lisa and Gabriel waited, my mind already formulating the next step. It was time to expose the truth, no matter how painful it was. "Aunt, what did you find out?" Lisa asked as soon as I entered. "Enough," I replied, my gaze fixed on Gabriel, who had fallen asleep exhausted in her lap. "It is time to end this farce." When I returned to the hall, the party was in full swing. The band was playing lively music, couples were dancing on the floor, and laughter flowed along with the expensive wine Vanessa had personally chosen. Michael circulated among the guests, radiant as I had not seen him in years, proudly introducing his new wife. Vanessa was stunning in her wedding dress, smiling for the cameras, accepting congratulations with the rehearsed grace of an actress receiving an award. In the distance, I saw Gloria, the younger sister, in a corner of the hall. Her face was tense, her eyes nervously checking the clock as if expecting something to happen. I squeezed the small paper in my hand, feeling it burn like an ember. My first impulse was to run to Michael and show him proof of the monstrosity he had just married, but I held back. I had to be methodical. I needed irrefutable evidence, or I would risk losing my son forever. I approached Gloria discreetly, and she started when she saw me. "Ms. Rachel," she stammered. "Where is Gabriel? Is everything okay?" "You know he is not," I replied, keeping my voice low but firm, "and I think you know exactly why." The little color left in her face faded. "I do not know what you are talking about, ma'am," she murmured, her eyes avoiding mine. "This paper." I showed her the folded note. It was found under our table. "You gave it to Charlie, right? On your sister's orders." Gloria began to shake her eyes, filling with tears. She was just a girl, I realized, not much more than a teenager easily manipulated by her older sister. "She said it was just a joke," she whispered finally, her voice almost inaudible. "She said Gabriel was a spoiled brat who needed to learn a lesson. I did not know, I swear I did not know about the allergy." I felt a wave of pity mixed with horror. "Gloria, do you understand what could have happened if Gabriel had eaten those shrimp?" She covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. "My sister has always been like this. She gets everything she wants, no matter how. When we were little, she stopped abruptly, as if she had said too much. "What? What did she do?" Gloria hesitated, then continued in a whisper. "There was a puppy I loved. She poisoned him because he tore a dress. She told everyone he ate something in the street." Tears ran down her face. "I never told anyone. She made me promise. She said no one would believe me anyway." A chill ran down my spine. The picture forming was darker than I imagined. We were not dealing with just jealousy or resentment. There was something deeply disturbing about Vanessa, a capacity for calculated cruelty that terrified me. "Gloria, I need your help," I said, holding her trembling hands. "For Gabriel, for your future nephew." She looked at me, guilt and fear fighting on her face. Finally, she nodded. "What do I have to do? Just tell the truth when the time comes." I looked for Charlie next, who nodded nervously to testify about the note. With these pieces in hand, I finally felt ready to confront the situation. I went back to the private room where Lisa waited with Gabriel. "Everything is ready," I announced. "We are going to end this now." Gabriel, now awake but still scared, grabbed my hand. "Grandma, I am scared." I knelt in front of him, holding his little face between my hands. "My love, do you remember when I told you about heroes? About how they feel fear but still do what is right?" He nodded slowly. "Today, the three of us are going to be heroes. We are going to protect each other like a real family does." When we entered the hall, the music had stopped. It was time for the speeches. Michael was standing with the microphone in his hand, about to make a toast to his new wife. His eyes found ours first, with relief to see us then, with confusion upon noticing our serious expressions. "Mom, where were you? Is everything okay?" he asked when we approached. I took a deep breath. "No, Michael, nothing is okay." My voice came out louder than I intended, attracting curious glances. "We need to talk, now." Vanessa materialized quickly by his side, her perfect smile revealing tension in the corners. "What happened, Ms. Rachel? Is there a problem with Gabriel?" "Yes," I replied, facing her gaze directly. "Someone tried to poison my grandson with shrimp. Someone who knows very well about his deadly allergy." A murmur of shock ran through the room. Michael paled instinctively, bending down to examine his son. "What are you talking about, Mom?" I showed him the note, now unfolded so everyone could see it. This paper was found under our table, a specific instruction to add shrimp to Gabriel's plate. Michael took the paper. His eyes widened in horror as he read it. This must be a terrible mistake. No one would do this on purpose. Ask Charlie. I pointed to the young waiter who had approached timidly. He received the note from Gloria's hands. All eyes turned to Vanessa's sister, who was trembling visibly in a corner, silent tears running down her face. Vanessa intervened quickly, her voice sweet but with a touch of desperation. This is absurd. Obviously, there was a misunderstanding. Gloria would never do something like that, right, dear? Gloria looked from her sister to me, then to Gabriel, who was hiding partially behind Lisa. Something seemed to break inside her. It was Vanessa, she said finally, her voice small but clear. She wrote the note and asked me to give it to Charlie. She said it was just a joke to scare Gabriel. The entire hall went into absolute silence. Vanessa let out a forced laugh. Gloria, what are you talking about? That is ridiculous. It is not the first time, Gloria continued, gaining courage. When we were little, she poisoned my puppy because he ruined a dress. She always hurts whoever gets in the way of her plans. The guests began to murmur, looking horrified from Vanessa to Gabriel. Michael was paralyzed, his face a mask of disbelief and pain. Vanessa, he turned slowly toward his wife. Say this is not true. Say you would never try to hurt my son. For a moment, I saw Vanessa's mask of perfection falter. Her eyes shone with something cold and calculating before she quickly composed her expression into one of shock and pain. Michael, how can you believe these accusations? Your own mother never accepted me, and now she is inventing these lies to separate us. Lies? Lisa stepped forward, protecting Gabriel behind her. How do you explain the pinch marks you left on him in the fitting room? How do you explain telling him he would be sent to a boarding school after the wedding? Or the times you scolded him cruelly when you thought no one was listening, I added. The little terrors you planted in him day after day. Vanessa looked around, seeing herself surrounded not only by us, but by the increasingly hostile gazes of the guests. Her composure began to crumble visibly. You do not understand. Her voice went up an octave. That boy is a burden, always crying for his dead mother, always in the way. Michael would never be completely mine as long as... She stopped abruptly, realizing what she had said. Michael stepped back as if he had been slapped, his face contorted in horror. As long as what, Vanessa? As long as my son was alive? That is not what I meant. She tried to correct herself, reaching out to him. Michael, you have to believe me. I love you. We can be happy together. Happy? He repeated in disbelief. You tried to kill my son on our wedding day. What kind of monster would do that? Something changed in Vanessa's eyes. The mask fell completely, revealing a coldness that made me shudder. A monster created by people like you, she hissed, her beautiful face contorting. Who cling to the past, who cannot move on. She is dead, Michael, dead. And that brat is just an anchor dragging you down. A stunned silence fell over the room. Vanessa looked around, realizing too late what she had done. Her shoulders dropped, and she began to laugh, a hysterical sound, almost manic. You do not understand, she said between laughter broken by tears. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to have it all. I have always gotten everything I wanted. Always. 2 security guards from the hotel approached discreetly, positioning themselves near her. Michael, still in shock, finally reacted. He walked to Gabriel and took him in his arms, hugging him tightly. Forgive me, son, he whispered. His voice choked. Forgive me for not seeing, for not protecting you. Gabriel curled up against his father's chest, sobbing quietly. It is okay, Daddy. Grandma and Aunt Lisa protected me. Michael looked up at us, his expression a mix of gratitude and shame. Thank you, he said simply. Thank you for saving my son when I could not. Lisa touched his arm gently. Let's go home, Michael. This party is over. As we headed toward the exit under the stunned gaze of the guests, Vanessa was discreetly escorted to another area by the security guards. Her voice still echoed through the hall between pleas and accusations, a tuneless symphony of a disturbed soul. In the car on the way home, Gabriel fell asleep quickly in the back seat, exhausted by the emotional whirlwind. Michael drove in silence, occasionally wiping away discreet tears. "How could I be so blind?" he murmured finally. "How did I not realize what was happening right under my nose?" "Love sometimes blinds us," I replied gently. "You wanted to believe you had found happiness again, at the cost of my own son." His voice cracked. "What kind of father does that make me?" Lisa, sitting in the back with Gabriel, leaned forward. A human father, Michael, who made mistakes but who can still fix things. He looked in the rearview mirror. His eyes met hers. Something silent passed between them, an understanding, maybe even the beginning of a possibility that I had seen growing for years. I looked out the window, watching the city lights pass like shooting stars. The nightmare was over, but I knew the healing would be a long process. Deep wounds had been opened, traumas had been created, but I also knew, with the certainty only a grandmother can have, that our little family would come out stronger on the other side, because in the end it was not blood ties or marriage vows that saved us. It was true love, the kind that protects, that sees beyond appearances, that stands firm even in the darkest moments. The kind of love that does not need white dresses or diamond rings to prove its strength. The days that followed the wedding disaster were a whirlwind of emotions and difficult decisions. Michael filed for an annulment immediately, citing fraud and bad faith. We also filed a police report against Vanessa for the attempted poisoning of Gabriel. Our house, formerly a minefield of silent tensions, now seemed wrapped in a cloud of renewed mourning. Michael became a shadow moving through the rooms like a ghost carrying the weight of guilt and shame. Gabriel, for his part, began to have nightmares. He woke up screaming in the middle of the night, soaked in sweat, calling for me or for his father. On one of those nights, while I calmed Gabriel after a particularly intense nightmare, Michael appeared at the bedroom door, his eyes red from held-back tears. "Can I?" he asked hesitantly, pointing to the bed where I held Gabriel against my chest. I nodded, moving to make room for him. Michael sat next to us, running his hand gently through his son's hair. "I had a bad dream, Daddy," Gabriel murmured sleepily. "Aunt Vanessa was in my room watching me." Michael swallowed hard, silent tears running down his face. "It was just a dream, son. She will never come near you again, I promise. Do you really swear?" Gabriel's eyes searched his father's face for the reassurance he needed so much. "I swear on my life," Michael answered with a conviction that left no doubts. When Gabriel finally fell asleep again, we sat in silence for a while, watching his rhythmic breathing, his little chest rising and falling under the superhero blanket. How was I unable to see Mom? Michael finally broke the silence, his voice little more than a whisper. The signs were all there. I sighed, choosing my words carefully. "After Christina left, you were lost for so long. Vanessa appeared like a light at the end of the tunnel. It is understandable that you clung to that hope, at the cost of not noticing my own son's suffering." He shook his head, the disgust for himself evident in every word. "What kind of father does that?" "A human father." I repeated the words Lisa had said in the car. "One who now has the chance to fix things." In the following days, Michael dedicated himself completely to rebuilding Gabriel's trust. He took a leave of absence from work, spending hours playing with his son, taking him for walks, sitting with him to do homework. Little by little, I saw the relationship between the two strengthen like a plant, finally receiving the necessary light to grow. Lisa became an even more constant presence in our lives. She came every day after work, bringing small surprises for Gabriel, a new book, a car for his collection, homemade cookies. Her devotion to the boy was touching, and I frequently found her reading him stories or teaching him to put together complicated puzzles. One afternoon, while I watched the three of them in the yard, Michael pushing Gabriel on the swing, while Lisa filmed laughing at the funny faces the boy made, I felt a peace I had not experienced in years. There they were. Not the perfect margarine commercial family Vanessa had tried to forge, but a real family with scars and imperfections, united by genuine love. The investigation into the attempted poisoning moved slowly. Gloria, Vanessa's sister, presented herself as a witness, confirming that her sister had planned everything deliberately. Charlie the waiter also testified about the note he had received. The evidence was overwhelming. When we received the news that Vanessa had been formally charged, Michael and I sat on the porch watching the sunset while Gabriel played with his red car on the grass. "Do you think she will go to prison?" Michael asked, his voice neutral, almost detached. "Probably," I replied. "The evidence is solid." He nodded slowly. "You know, as terrible as all this has been on some level, I feel we were saved. If she had managed to hide her true nature for longer—" He left the sentence incomplete, but I understood perfectly. If we had not discovered it in time, who knows what could have happened to Gabriel? The idea was unbearable. "Did you really love her?" I asked gently, a question I had been keeping for weeks. Michael remained silent for a long time, his eyes fixed on the horizon, where the sun dipped slowly between distant buildings. "I think I loved the idea of her," he replied finally, "the promise of a new life, of leaving the pain behind. But now looking back, I do not know if I ever really knew her." That night, after Gabriel fell asleep, I found Lisa in the kitchen washing dinner dishes. Her hands moved mechanically over the plates, but her eyes were distant, lost in thought. "A penny for your thoughts," I said, taking a cloth to dry the dishes. She smiled shyly. "I was thinking about how life turns around. A few weeks ago, we were all preparing for a wedding. Now we are rebuilding," I completed, piece by piece. Lisa nodded, passing me another plate. "Gabriel is getting better. Today he laughed for real in that uncontrolled way children do. It had been so long since I heard him like that. In large part thanks to you," I observed. "You have been an anchor for him, for all of us actually." She blushed slightly, looking away. "It is the least I can do. You are my family." I put my hand over hers, stopping her movement. "Lisa, I know we have never talked about this, but your feelings for Michael are not exactly a secret to me." Her face turned completely red and she opened her mouth to protest, but I raised my hand to silence her. "I am not judging. Far from it. In fact, I always thought you two—" I left the sentence in the air, watching her reaction. "Aunt Rachel," she stammered. "Michael just went through a terrible trauma. He needs time to heal. Besides, he sees me only as a cousin, almost a sister." "Maybe," I agreed. "Or maybe he has not yet realized what is right in front of him." She smiled sadly. "Some things are not meant to happen, Aunt, and that is okay. The important thing is that Gabriel is safe and happy." That night left me thoughtful. As I prepared for bed, I reflected on how true love manifests in such different ways. The obsessive and possessive love of Vanessa, which was capable of destroying to get what she wanted, and the altruistic and patient love of Lisa, which put the happiness of others above her own. Months passed, and our little family slowly found a new rhythm. Gabriel became the happy and curious boy he was before his eyes regaining the shine they had lost. Michael transformed as a father, establishing a connection with his son he had never had before. And I went back to breathing without that constant weight on my chest, that suffocating worry that had accompanied me for so long. Vanessa's trial took place 6 months after the incident. We opted to spare Gabriel from the process, but Michael, Lisa, and I attended every hearing. Seeing Vanessa in the defendant's dock dressed in simple clothes instead of the elegant outfits she always wore was surreal. Her face, formerly animated by a calculated smile, was now empty, almost apathetic. Only her eyes maintained that calculating coldness that had always given me chills. The defendant is found guilty of attempted qualified homicide against a minor, the judge announced after the jury's deliberation. Sentenced to 12 years in prison. I felt a mix of relief and sadness as I watched Vanessa being led away by the guards. There was no joy in justice being done, only the feeling of a dark chapter finally closed. On the way home, Michael drove in silence, his expression unreadable. Lisa, sitting next to me in the back seat, held my hand discreetly, offering silent support. It is over. Michael finally spoke, his voice hoarse, with held-back emotion. It is really over. Yes, I replied softly. Now we can move on. That night, after telling a softened version of the trial result to Gabriel, my grandson asked me to stay by his side until he fell asleep. Lying next to him in his little bed, I watched his face relax gradually, his long lashes resting on rosy cheeks. "Grandma," he murmured sleepily, "Mommy Christina is watching over me from heaven, right?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yes, my love, she will always be watching over you, and Aunt Lisa also takes care of me here on earth," he continued, his eyes already closed, "like she is a second mommy." I remained silent, reflecting on the simple and deep wisdom of that child. Children see what adults often cannot see, I thought. They perceive true love even when it is disguised as friendship or companionship. Spring arrived, bringing with it new beginnings. Gabriel had entered a phase of fascination with plants, so we transformed a corner of the yard into his personal vegetable garden. Every day after school, he ran to check the growth of his cherry tomatoes and lettuce. On one of those afternoons, while I helped Gabriel water his seedlings, I noticed Michael and Lisa talking on the other side of the garden. They were sitting on the old wooden swing, very close to each other, their heads inclined in an intimate conversation. Suddenly, I saw Michael touch Lisa's face with a delicacy that spoke more than any word. Gabriel followed my gaze and smiled. "Daddy is happy around Aunt Lisa," he observed with the direct simplicity of childhood. "Me too." I nodded, unable to answer because of the emotion tightening my throat. Sometimes, I thought, we need to pass through fire to find the way home. We need to know falsehood to recognize what is genuine. The romance between Michael and Lisa bloomed slowly like a carefully nourished plant. There were no grand declarations or dramatic gestures, just the gradual recognition of a love that had always been there, waiting for the right moment to bloom. One night, almost a year after the wedding disaster, we were all in the living room after dinner. Gabriel played with his building blocks on the rug, Lisa helped Michael review work reports, and I knitted silently, enjoying the domestic peace that enveloped us. Gabriel suddenly lifted his head from his toy. "Aunt Lisa, are you going to be my mommy now?" he asked with the shocking frankness only children possess. The whole room froze. Lisa blushed deeply while Michael looked at his son with astonishment. Holding my breath, I waited for the development of that unexpected scene. "Gabriel?" Michael started hesitantly. "Why do you ask that?" The boy shrugged as if the answer were obvious. "Because you love each other, and because Aunt Lisa already takes care of me like a mommy. She just needs to live here with us." Michael and Lisa exchanged an intense look, a silent conversation happening between them. Finally, Michael knelt next to his son. "Gabriel, would you like Aunt Lisa to be your mommy?" he asked gently. The boy nodded energetically. "Yes, she makes the best hot chocolate in the world and never gets mad when I make a mistake on my homework." Michael laughed, his eyes watering. "Those are excellent reasons." He looked at Lisa, who watched the scene with eyes shining with emotion. "What do you think, Lisa? Do you want to be officially part of our family?" It was not a traditional marriage proposal. There was no ring, no bent knee, but it was full of a love so genuine it made me hold my breath. Lisa joined them on the rug, hugging Gabriel tight before looking at Michael. "I am already part of this family," she answered with a choked voice. "But yes, I would love to make it official." Gabriel let out a shout of joy and threw his arms around her neck. "Can I call you Mommy Lisa now?" She kissed his forehead, tears running freely down her face. "You can call me whatever you want, my love. I have loved you like a son for a long time." From my quiet spot on the sofa, I watched that scene with an overflowing heart. I thought of Christina, how she would have approved of this union. I thought of Vanessa and the glaring contrast between the possessive love that destroys and the generous love that builds. And I thought about how sometimes families are not formed by blood or by grandiose ceremonies, but by daily choices of love and protection. Michael's second wedding was as different from the first as day is from night. There was no luxurious hall, no orchestra, no extravagant wedding dress. Instead, we chose the garden of our house, decorated simply with fairy lights and wildflowers. The guests were only close family and a few dear friends. Gabriel, wearing a blue suit he had chosen himself, was the ring bearer, carrying the rings with immense pride stamped on his face. Lisa was radiant in a simple champagne-colored lace dress. There was no veil hiding her face, no mask of perfection, just her genuine smile and eyes shining with true happiness as she walked toward Michael, who waited for her under the old oak tree. "I never thought I would find love again," Michael said during his vows, his voice choked with emotion, much less that it had been by my side the whole time. Lisa smiled through her tears. "I loved you in silence for so long," she replied, "that being able to say it out loud seems like a miracle." When they kissed, sealing the union, Gabriel ran and got between them, hugging both their legs. Michael lifted him in his arms and the three hugged while everyone applauded. It was not the perfect picture from a wedding magazine. It was better. It was real, imperfect, and absolutely true. During the small reception in the yard, with soft music playing and lights twinkling among the trees, I found a moment to be alone, watching my family from afar. Michael and Lisa danced slowly, their bodies close, whispering secrets to each other. Gabriel ran among the guests with other children, his laughter resonating through the night like music. "I'm so happy you are here to see this," said a voice beside me. It was Mary, Christina's older sister, who had come from the countryside for the wedding. "It is like a circle closing, isn't it?" I replied, accepting the glass of champagne she offered me. "Christina would have approved," Mary commented softly, following my gaze toward the dancing couple. "She always liked Lisa. She always said if something happened to her, she would like Michael to move on with someone like Lisa." I felt tears burning in the corners of my eyes. I know. Sometimes I feel like somehow she orchestrated all this from above. Mary smiled. Who knows, love has mysterious ways. Later that night, after the last guest left and Gabriel finally fell asleep exhausted from so much joy, I sat on the porch contemplating the stars. I thought about everything we had been through in the last 2 years. The pain, the fear, the betrayal. How we had been on the edge of a disaster that could have destroyed our family forever. And how by some miracle of attention and love, we managed not only to survive, but to find a path to a happiness deeper and truer than before. I remembered the small folded note that had changed everything. Table 8. Add shrimp to the child's portion. Simple words that hid unimaginable cruelty, but that ironically ended up saving us. If Gabriel had not seen that note, if I had not trusted his fears, if we had all remained blind for longer, the thought was unbearable. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually turning points in disguise, abysses that force us to look inward, to reevaluate, to change direction. Vanessa was still serving her sentence. Occasionally, news about her reached us through Gloria, who had cut almost all contact with her sister, but still visited her a few times a year out of a sense of family obligation. Apparently, Vanessa showed no remorse. She remained cold and distant, convinced she had been treated unjustly. "She is never going to change," Gloria told me on one of the rare occasions we met. "She really believes she was right, that Gabriel was just an obstacle on her path to happiness." I shook my head, feeling more pity than anger in that moment. What kind of happiness can be built on the suffering of an innocent child? I asked more to myself than to her. Gloria shrugged sadly. Vanessa was always like that. Even when we were little, she could not see beyond her own desires, for her people are just objects useful or obstacles. The idea was terrifying and made me thankful daily for the instinct that kept me alert, for the courage Gabriel had to speak about his fears, for the love Lisa offered so generously, for Michael's ability to finally see the truth, however painful it was. Months after the wedding, on a hot summer afternoon, Gabriel came running into the house, his face lit up by a huge smile. "Grandma, Mommy Lisa, Daddy come see." We followed his enthusiasm to the garden where he pointed frantically at a tomato plant. Look, it worked! My first little red tomato. There it was, small but perfectly red, the first fruit of the garden he had been cultivating with so much dedication. A symbol so simple and powerful of new life, of rewarded patience, of constant care. Michael knelt next to his son, ruffling his hair affectionately. "It looks beautiful, champ. Should we pick it for dinner?" Lisa joined them, her 5-month pregnant belly already visible under her light dress. Our first tomato from the garden. She smiled, hugging Gabriel's shoulders. A historic moment. I stayed a few steps back watching the three, soon 4 members of that family that had been reborn from the ashes of desperation. My heart overflowed with silent gratitude for the path we had traveled. That night, after Gabriel fell asleep and Michael and Lisa retired, I stayed once more on the porch contemplating the stars. I thought about how our story could have taken such a different turn, how we were so close to tragedy, walking blindly toward the abyss. "Thank you," I whispered to the starry sky, to Christina, to the universe, to any force that had guided us through that darkness. "Thank you for giving us the chance to see the truth in time, because the truth, however painful, always sets you free. And true love, the one that protects instead of possesses, that builds instead of destroys, that chooses the well-being of the other above one's own desires, that love is the greatest protection we can have against the shadows of the world." As I went inside to sleep, I passed Gabriel's room. He slept peacefully, his old red car still safe in his hand. I smiled, noticing that next to the bed, there was now a framed photo. Michael, Lisa, and Gabriel smiling under the old oak tree. And next to it, never forgotten, never replaced, the photo of Christina hugging baby Gabriel. It was not a competition of memories or loves. It was the continuation of a story. Different chapters of the same book of a family that had learned the hard way to recognize and value true love. And as I gently closed the door, I gave thanks once more for the small miracle that was that note found under the table, for the bravery of a 7-year-old boy who refused to stay silent, for the intuition that made me look beyond appearances, because sometimes saving a family is a matter of paying attention to small signs, of trusting the whispers of the heart, of fiercely protecting those we love. Our story could have been a tragedy, but it turned into a testament to the power of true love. And that, I believe, is the most valuable lesson we could have learned. Now, if you like this story, click on the next video appearing on the screen, because in it, the story of betrayal and revolt will surprise you like never before.